there is a plan in place that will make the world better, significantly better for everybody on it. So I would encourage everybody around the world to look up that plan, look up globalgoals.org, spend some time with the goals, have a real think about what it is you could do to make a difference. Never believe you can't make a difference, because everybody can make some sort of positive impact on the people in the world around them, and love each other just a little bit more.
What do the founders of Calm, Planet Organic, Photobox, Moonpig, Shazam, Mumsnet, Last Minute, WeTransfer, Albright and the School of Life all have in common? They all put their brain first and start their day with Heights. Heights is the smart supplement for brain health and cognitive performance using plant-based, natural ingredients designed to help you thrive. Listeners of this show can get 25% off their first month with the code LEADERSHEIGHTS at www.yourheights.com.
In September 2015, 193 world leaders agreed to 17 global goals for sustainable development. If these goals are completed, it would mean an end to extreme poverty, inequality and climate change by 2030.
Ta-da!
Furthermore, if these goals are completed, there's a good chance today's guest will be able to look back in her life and say, I helped make that happen. Soundbite?
Let's hope so.
Sure. When you think of your mission being too tough to achieve or too pie in the sky, we want you to come back to listen to this episode as a true inspiration for Gail's goal, which was to reach 7 billion people in 7 days.
Woo!
For the record, there are 7.6 billion people on Earth. Some guests build household brands you'll have heard of in this series, and some guests can call Barack Obama, Jennifer Lopez, Stephen Hawking, David Beckham, Bill Gates, Meryl Streep, and even get the Spice Girls back together. That is Gail Gallie. A lady so convincing she can get Google to agree a takeover of their homepage. So whilst Gail doesn't quite follow the typical entrepreneur path, creating that consumer brand you know and love, her CV is enough to make you feel sick with envy or perhaps warm with admiration. It really depends what type of person you are. For a snapshot, our guest today started at Oxford, joined the BBC where she launched CBeebies and BBC Three, tongue twister indeed, before running Radio 1's marketing department, where he had an especially fun period of her life, as I understand it, non-stop raving and misbehaving, to quote Annie Mac.
How dare you?
She was then appointed as the CEO of ad agency Fallon, before quitting that to become business partners with legendary British movie legend and founder of comic relief Richard Curtis of Four Weddings, Love Actually and Notting Hill fame. There really isn't even time to discuss the fact that she helped Tony Blair to get into power by running his ad campaign, nor the fact she was CEO for the Jamie Oliver Foundation, because sadly when a guest has achieved this much, we have to try and focus where we can. So, you're about to hear from one of the coolest and more inspirational people we've had the pleasure to meet in our journey. So before we make her blush too much, let's get cracking. Hi, Gail.
Hello.
You took your hat off.
I did take my hat off. It's radio. It's a good hat for radio.
Okay, so it was just for the photo. Very good. Welcome to the show. Thank you for being part of it.
It's actually quite sweaty under here.
Good. What, under this?
Sweaty box. Yeah? It's a classic sweaty box.
Not a fan. You are wearing lots of layers, so...
I'm wearing Finisterre.
Yeah.
I'm warming up.
Okay, so before we get into the interesting stuff,
like
which
the Archers.
is...
I always wanted to be in the Archers.
You... I've never listened to the Archers. Is that what they do?
Yeah, that's what they do.
No, there's famous making amusing things for sound bites. Like this would be a car opening.
Okay, got you. So welcome to our guest Gail Gallie, and we are going to do a quick fire round to get her all warmed up. So cracking straight into it, Radio 1 or BBC 3?
Radio 1.
Tony Blair or Jamie Oliver?
Tony Blair.
It's harsh. Barack Obama or Jennifer Lopez?
Really hard. Barack, I think.
I thought you loved Jennifer Lopez.
I do love Jennifer Lopez.
Most meaningful global goal to you that resonates the most, and why? I'm guessing ocean.
Life below water, because I think it's the source from which all life springs.
Person you look up to the most in the world?
Richard Curtis right now.
Favourite app on your phone right now?
30-day squat challenge.
It is January. Yeah.
How many days in a year?
Don't knock until you try it. How many days in? 9.
Very good. I mean, it's not the 9th of January, but whatever.
11th, but...
last book you read?
Oh, The Bone Clocks by David Mitchell. Really frightening vision of the future if we don't sort it out.
Okay, great recommendation, thank you. Top trumps or poker? You know why I'm asking you this one.
Poker's more fun.
But top trumps have been made for the UN.
We have just made a set of UN Sustainable Development Goals. If anybody wants any, get in touch, because we've got a warehouse full of them.
So yeah, if anyone wants to play top trumps, which is a very odd experience on the global goals, where you've got poverty and it beats hunger, it's a very uncomfortable but very real game to play.
Hours of fun.
Before you became a campaigning hero for the world and making all of our lives better and futures better, just to make these kind of career goals more attainable to many of our listeners, how did you actually start off? We were always interested in saving the world.
No, definitely not. I was interested in saving myself.
Are you interested in saving the world now?
Yes, Nick's
Good.
now.
All right, you're authentic.
Now I'm interested. But no, when I went to university, and we were in the last era where you actually got given some money by the government, let alone free fees. But that ran out. I think it was I was a linguist, so I had a year abroad in my third year, busted loads of cash, and came back to find the grants had been taken away from us. So I was fucked for cash I mustn't swear, so then my mum can listen to it. Don't put swearing in it. That's going to be really difficult.
No, come on, that's unrealistic.
So in my fourth year, I found myself extremely broke. And by the end of that year, I absolutely had to get a job that was going to pay some money. I was also completely determined to go to London. I'd grown up in Newcastle and I'd only ever wanted to live in London. And at that time, maybe they still do this thing called the milk round, where certain industries go and fish for different universities. And I really I'd wanted since I was little to read the news. I really wanted to be Anna Ford. And I still look a little bit like her. But they weren't recruiting. So then I thought telly would be fun. They weren't recruiting. The only thing that was recruiting were lawyers and the city, both of which I'd be absolutely dreadful at. The irony of me being on some sort of entrepreneurial leadership programme is not lost on me. I'm shit at making money, really terrible. Never made a penny. But they were recruiting for advertising, and I thought, well, that's quite close to telly because adverts go on telly. So I did the milk round, got a few interviews, got a couple of jobs, took one. And I think what the thread has always been about communicating. So it's not that I wanted to save the world at that point, but I clearly like a chat and I wanted to communicate, and I had a riot. Absolutely loved being in advertising. But it culminated in Tony and the political campaign, and that's what switched me to something more purposeful.
And you went to Oxford. We don't really seem the Oxbridge type. Do you believe in there being an Oxbridge type? What were people like around you?
Oh, it was a real shock. Yeah, there definitely is an Oxbridge stereotype. I don't know if it's actually true. In that era, again, of significance was that Oxford you could get into on 2 E's still at that point, as long as you had the right connections and did a good interview. Cambridge has always been the swotty one that you had to get 85 A stars at. So the types at Oxford, you got quite a lot of extremely networked people who all come from the same schools, who all knew each other. It was terrifying to arrive at. From my memory is that my dad drove me down from Newcastle and didn't even come in because I think looking back on it was just so daunting for him. I didn't have proper luggage. I had sort of my crap in plastic bags. And I remember him driving away and me just literally looking at this enormous kind of Balliol College thinking like, oh my God, I've got no idea what to do. And I'd also been sent there to do French and Italian because at the interview they'd thought I was cute, I think, and unusually common. And so they'd never placed for French and English, which is what I wanted to do. So they gave me a place for French and Italian despite the fact that I kept telling them I didn't speak Italian. They seemed to brush that over with that kind of Oxbridge confidence.
Did you speak Italian by the end?
Yeah.
Can you still speak Italian?
Yeah.
And French?
Better, yeah.
Anything else?
I can get by in German and Spanish. So the Oxbridge type, I would say that is super confident, networked. Now, I don't know if that's still true, but when I got there, it was overwhelming. Everyone seemed to have been to St Paul's or Westminster, and it was really overwhelming. But I've only had 2 boyfriends, I like to keep it really easy. And the first one I met pretty much in the first term, and he was much more Oxbridge type, and I felt like he protected me and helped me kind of get my head around what I was doing.
So what was your motivation to go work in the BBC other than Anna Ford? She was maybe your inspiration, but beyond that, was that the career you wanted? What was the thing?
Well, so as I said, I was in advertising and culminated in working on the Things Can Only Get Better political campaign. And like they do in advertising, when you've had a hit, they then start throwing at whatever you want at you. And at that time, I remember it was running the VW campaign. And I remember thinking, I literally couldn't give less of a shit about cars. I didn't understand them. I don't have one. I'd cycle. Is that all? But I had been tickled by the relationship with the media that I'd learned through politics. Because when you're doing a political campaign, what you realise is everything in advertising, bought spots and ads, long form video things, pointless. All about the headlines, all about that immediate kind of tricking journalists into writing a quick headline. And I just really enjoyed that the power of influence that you could have if you can work with the media. That coincided with the fact that I really loved music. So I wrote. I sound about 85 in this interview. I had a grant, and I wrote.
No, you've already said that you've got a mother, so you couldn't be 85. So it's fine.
I wrote a hand-wrote a letter to the head of Radio 1 saying, this is my background, I really love music, I'd really like to come and... I was intending to be like a studio runner or anything, and just piece of luck, at that point the head of marketing had just been promoted to go and work for the rest of radio, and the BBC did that brilliant thing, a bit like Oxford had done to me, which is, she seems to have had a career in advertising, that's quite like marketing, is it? Yes, absolutely fine. And so I bowled up with really zero relevant experience, but that's how I landed at Radio 1.
Do you recommend the BBC as a place to work?
Massively.
Why?
I'm sure it's changed since when I was there, towards the end of my time there, so I was there for about 9 years. This thing came in called the Freedom of Information Act, which everyone is now very familiar with. But at the time, when I was there for the majority of it, it wasn't there. So I'm not saying that was great because we could be really secretive and fraudulent. It was great because it gave the BBC the confidence to be bold and independent and investigative and all the things that the BBC should be and is famous for and is unique in the world for. I'm a huge believer in the public service broadcasting model. And everybody you meet when you go around the world, and obviously I'm much more international now than I was then, you realise quite what a privilege it is that we have this incredible thing and what a... that we mess with it at our peril. And when I was there, I think it was in one of it's always in this cycle of political stability, not, depending on who's in government and how close it is to its licence fee negotiation. And I think I had 5 golden years where the licence fee was secure, FOA wasn't there, and it was a really bold, pioneering place to be. And as Radio 1, at the time that I was there, and the job that I was doing with the controller was to reinvigorate a young audience, and only we were doing that. And so there was freedom within freedom. And I now know, doing most of our fundraising and having had much more commercial experience than I had then, the freedom that is not worrying about where your money's coming from. So I obviously had to apply for a marketing budget each year and I had to get it signed off, but there was always going to be one. And then once you spent it, your metrics were things like approval ratings or kind of, literally Groovathon ratings, like, was that cool? Did we break a new band? So a real privilege. So yeah, and then as an organisation, would I recommend it? Yeah, I really would. It is, apart from that culture that was so inspiring to work in, it also was packed with really funny, quirky, intelligent, expert people, the likes of which is difficult to find under one roof. And it was a real... I still have many good friends who were there then, and a lot of my friends that I had anyway have done stints there, and I still have good friends there. It's a really wonderful organisation. Unfortunately, the comedy W1A is also incredibly accurate. Bleedingly accurate. I've been in some of those meetings that they're recreating. The one about how I didn't know we had 7 orchestras. I've literally been in that meeting, and it's so accurate. It's like someone has bugged the last 10 years of the corporation. But obviously it ratchets up. It doesn't show it doing anything good. And that's so all of that exists in daily life there, but you get these enormous highs of what you can
for
achieve.
anyone that hasn't actually watched W1A, can you share any stories that are imprinted in your mind of meetings like that of that ilk?
Well, there was when I was on the radio kind of broader board, and there were always cutbacks. The BBC's always having to look at its budget like anything in the last sort of 20 years. And there was a time when we were looking at, do you cut live events, do you cut orchestras, do you cut training and development? And you'd have these amazingly tribal kind of meetings where people would be sitting quietly waiting for the moment to go, you can't take that away. And then that meeting where in W1A where they go, we have an orchestra for community. I remember someone saying, we have a Welsh orchestra. And then somebody go, don't you dare touch it. It was just very funny. Very fun, very, very accurate.
So there's a lot of people like stuck in their ways and very protective of change, would you say?
I think there were when I was there, because it hadn't had that sort of Exocet missile of cuts and change. And remember, I was there right before I left, and then there were these enormous scandals. So the Jimmy Savile scandal, what was the thing about someone, they recut the footage of the Queen walking because they wanted it to look more dramatic, and these things exploded the confidence of the BBC, and for, you know, obviously it was very disturbing, I think, for the organisation, but in some ways it shook up, especially the bad ones like the Savile scandal and other kind of inappropriate things that have happened since. I think a lot of the dead wood was shaken out. But when I was there, yeah, of course, there were people we used to giggle about where Radio 1 producers go when they die. And it was like, it's Radio 2 evening. And these people would rattle around the halls and you'd think, wow, are they still there? Mm-hmm. You know, people in their sort of 60s who've started as runners, you know, in the 60s.
I mean, actually, just, fairly topical, and obviously tell me to fuck off if you don't want to talk about it. But, you know, living in the world as we do right now of a Me Too campaign, is there anything like that for you as a young woman starting a career in a big organisation like that
in the media?
Recall?
Do you know, I clearly am not, I'm clearly in the minority, or I'm really butt ugly, but I never came across it. I never came across it at the BBC, and
I think it's more that no one would want to fuck with you.
As
in, like,
good use of the word with.
Yes.
Yeah. Good use of the word with.
I could edit that out.
Dirty day, Grumpy.
Well, I just imagine you turning around and just smacking someone in the face straight
Well,
up.
I think I definitely may give off a bit of that. Because in advertising, as a young trainee, it was definitely there. And absolutely, that's how you behave. And that's the difficult thing with Me Too and that whole harassment thing, isn't it? Is that one person's ludicrous behaviour, because I would laugh at it, if that happened to hit someone who was, for whatever reason, feeling more vulnerable or insecure, it would feel very threatening. So the BBC, no. I didn't see it. There were definitely whiffy rumours around some of the older DJs when I was there, like Radio 1 roadshow tours and, you know, stuff like that. But in terms of management, absolutely not. I mean, it was an impeccably feminist organisation in my day. I mean, most of the women in the level above me, which is the director levels, were women. Most of the people there were women. The only thing it hasn't had in my time was a female director general, which it should do now.
And
politics, female DG.
Yeah.
Fat time.
Annie Matt for president.
She's got too much history.
So, just coming on to the last point on Radio 1, I know that you like a rave, and I know that you like to... I know that you did like a rave, and I know that you did like to enjoy yourself. You still like to enjoy yourself?
I love music.
So,
and I love dancing.
Talk to us about some of the fun shit that goes down at Radio 1.
Oh, where did it start?
Come on.
I think, again, this change of the freedom of information, the budget cuts, meant we had a pretty gilded era. And there was a situation, basically, where I had an amazing relationship with the controller, who trusted me entirely, and my head of music, live music. We had a great relationship. All of us were a great team and respectful of what we didn't know. So when Matt and I would go to the controller and say, "You've absolutely got to go to the Miami Dance Conference, Andy. I mean, where are you? This is crazy that Radio 1's not there." He'd go, "Okay." So we could just write your summer. So we did Miami. We'd started Radio 1 in Ibiza together, which is obviously now a monumental thing. My most fun, I think, that in terms of bending the rules was... I happen to be I still am part of it, but a large set of friends that come from this DJ crew called Sancho Panza, and we all wanted to go to Glastonbury, and getting tickets for Glastonbury free is always tricky. It's impossible now, but it was even tricky then. And I needed to get something like 22 free tickets because that was the size of our crew with their girlfriends and what have you. So Matt and I concocted this idea for Michael Levis that he could open the festival a night early and we could build this mammoth kind of dance stage called the Pyramid Stage. Not the Pyramid Stage, that's the main one. A mini pyramid.
That's unbelievable.
That would be amazing. Can you imagine?
Knock it together the night before.
I think the Druids invented the Pyramid Stage. Now, would it be quite? But it was a mini pyramid basically, and it was in the area between the other and the pyramid, and we persuaded him to open it early, only to get all my friends DJing. And actually my personal highlight was my now husband, who's then my boyfriend, who I was really trying to impress. I bought him some decks to look cool. Well, no, it gets better. So I bought him some decks, mainly because I wanted to learn to DJ and I turned out to be far too impatient. He then turned out to be quite naturally good. But I put a long bill on that Thursday night, which culminated in Sasha, which for both of us at the time was one of our kind of ultimate heroes. And I put James on first. So we have a flyer somewhere that goes James Gallie, chicka 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 Sasha. So that's kind of, I think that's the high point of that era.
I think convincing Michael Levis to get a whole group in by building a little stage or whatever, that's, you know,
now
one
it's
of the
normal,
most
right? Now
romantic
the fest, exactly. And Reader, he married me.
Yeah, exactly. I feel like you deserved it. So that was a period of bending the rules, and then rather strangely, you left and became CEO.
Yeah, I did a little bit of my own company in between. So I founded a little consultancy with a great friend called Jim Godfrey, slightly around lifestyle and having children. And Jim's a great friend, very clever. He's in comms, but both rule benders, both really musical fans. And by now I'm talking musicals. So I do remember we had a lot of fun writing, playing show tunes in my back garden whilst knocking off proposals that happened to earn us quite a lot of money. It was pre the sort of latest wave of financial crashes, so it was an easy time. And in many ways, I look back at it and think, why on earth did I go and get a proper job again? But the reason I did that was, again, serendipity. My old client, no, I was his client at the BBC. My old agency, Fallon, the founder there, who's a great old friend, rang me up, I think for the lounge in Heathrow, and said, "Do you fancy coming to be the CEO at Fallon?" I think I'd just been in hospital, so I was quite sort of high on morphine, and I was like, "Yeah, I think." Did you say CEO? Because I'd never been one, and it wasn't a path I was expecting to go down. He said, yeah, babe, it'll be absolutely brilliant. I'm back on Monday, let's talk then. So I went in to see him on Monday, and I had the job by Tuesday. And I kind of thought, well, what's the worst thing that can happen? I'll get that on my CV. I'll give running an agency a go. I didn't fancy going back into advertising, is the absolute truth, because even then I thought it's not purposeful enough for where I want to be. But I did think it's an opportunity, and actually I really enjoyed it for the first couple of years.
For people that don't know enough about advertising agencies, because it's a certain world, etc., give us some idea, other than the BBC, who are their clients? Like, what are the typical clients you see at Fallon?
Fallon's big hits had been the Gorilla, the drumming Gorilla for Cadbury, and Sony balls, so all the balls bouncing down San Francisco streets. Yeah, so exploding paint. So they were heavy hitters, but when I went to work there, all the original founders, which often happens when you get bought by a bigger group, so they'd been bought by Publicis, had walked out because they'd fallen out with the management, and only Robert had stayed, and he was going to take over the bigger machine that was Saatchi & Saatchi. So he needed someone that he knew and trusted to come in, and I mean, really, it was a mistake on his part, much as I love him for it, because I was absolutely dreadful at it. In truth, I mean, I was very cheerful, and the team there, about 120 people or so, were very, very broken and damaged by this sort of trauma of being bought, and then the loved founders leaving. So I was really good at that bit. I've always been decent at cheering people up. But in terms of the numbers, I mean, I was awful. I remember my first meeting with my FD and him showing me what should have been third nature to a CEO. I mean, literally looking and doing that kind of, woo, okay, that looks terrific. And then him going, but what are we going to do? Look, that's down on year, and that's 25% looking. And I'm like, yeah, still looking really bad. Okay. I'm exaggerating, but it took me a while to get up to speed. Luckily, I was quite good at convincing people to come with us. And so I got myself out of basic incompetence by winning a huge piece of business from Nokia, which kind of quadrupled our revenue kind of thing. So it was great. And
great for them as well, sounds like it.
And then they collapsed massively before we even got going.
Oh, right.
So by then I understood how these things work, and I'd done a whole set of predictions based on a whole set of revenue that then didn't materialise, and then it was rough. And then I realised, like, this is not for me. The sort of grit that you need as an entrepreneur or any kind of CEO to get yourself out of proper dog-do financially, I just don't care enough. I'm like, I don't mind if we shrink. And, the holding company are like, we do. So that was the point that Rob and I agreed. It was probably best if I didn't
What
carry on.
do you prefer when you're looking back on? What would you rather do again? Work at the BBC or Fallon? Is it basically...
work at the BBC. Work at the BBC every day.
Do you want to do Skoda campaigns or get off your face with
I did Skoda.
Pete Tong? What's more fun?
It's not, Pete Tong doesn't get off his face.
No, I said you got off your face with Pete Tong. I didn't say anything about him.
It's no fun doing it on your own. And you should remember that, boys. It's less fun on your own.
Yeah, good campaign. Was that a Fallon one?
It's much more... I found the BBC a much more nurturing environment, and by the end, it wasn't just fun times. I was running marketing for BBC News, BBC Online, BBC Education, BBC Sport. There was sort of nothing at one point. this is why I left. I felt like there was nothing in the BBC that I didn't know was going on. There's a brilliant phrase that comes up in the thick of it a lot, in W1A a lot, which is, are you across that? And you have to say yes, because if you don't say you're across it, then you're clearly a lesser human being. Yeah, totally across that. But I literally go home on a Friday and think, I'm across everything. I'm not doing anything, and that I was a learning that I love doing things. Like, I love creating things, building things. My partner Richard always says to make stuff happen, you have to make stuff. And I've realised that I like that.
So this is a perfect segue. You just talked about Richard. So talk to us about how you met your now co-founders, Richard Curtis and Kate Garvey.
So Kate is a really old friend of mine. She's one of my best friends. And we've known each other for years. I met her because she was Tony Blair's diary manager when I first met her. And she was a constant and very senior advisor to him throughout his career and still is a great friend of his. But we knew each other well. I had just finished that working for myself. No, I just finished working at Fallon, and she had just come back after having a second baby after leaving Freud. So she worked for Matthew Freud for a while after Tony. And we were sitting having one of those girl lunches, which involved, I'm sure, Chablis and probably smoking, and sort of say, yeah, we're going to totally do something together, and it's going to be amazing, and we're never going to work for anyone crap. It's going to be amazing. Great. Ciao. And then, as I understand it, she kind of left that lunch and walked into a meeting at Google and bumped into Emma Freud, Richard's girlfriend, mother of his 4 children. And Emma said, oh, God, are you back? Richard really needs you. He's just had this crazy idea that he's gone to the UN with, and he has no idea how to make it happen. And Kate went to see him, and then she said to him, well, actually, my friend Gail and I, who you don't know because I didn't know Richard, she'd worked with him before on Make Poverty History. This could be something we could have a go at. Shall we have a go? So the 3 of us met and had a huddle, and the Ivy Club, I remember, it was very exciting.
Where?
The Ivy Club.
Okay, yeah.
And we all seemed to get on and committed we'd do it. And so for about 3 months, we just threw it around between ourselves, tried to make some sort of plan. I mean, it was pretty shambolic because there's not one of us is a kind of completer finishing kind of startup guru. Then thank God we got another great old friend of ours in Katie Bradford, who she was like, you haven't even got a bank account. She said, how much have you fundraised for this? And I went, oh, $1 million. She went, where's it going? I don't know yet. So she came and put some order and structure into it. And then it really took off.
So where's the name Project Everyone come from? I mean, because, in my mind, you've got someone like Richard Curtis, you've got someone like Gail Gallie. I can imagine you sitting around talking about brand names for the first 3 months.
God, no, we didn't do that at all. It was Richard's code name. He just thought the goals are for everyone. We want to reach. He knew at the beginning. I think he had this instinct that he wanted to reach everyone. The whole 7 billion 7 days Kate and I worked on later. But so he was. It's like Project, Microphone or Project Studio. It was a code name, and I kept thinking this is going to stick because this is what happens. And then by the time we were really up and underway, it seemed kind of crazy to change it. And because that was even before we'd named the goals. At that time, the Sustainable Development Goals were a policy document that was being made by the UN. The global goals is what we called them. So it just stuck. But it came out of Richard's head.
Okay.
Most great things do.
What was the initial pitch?
To the UN.
Yeah, I mean, in general, what was Project Everyone from the start? Like, how did you communicate it? We
were always going to be a communications unit dedicated to the promotion of the Sustainable Development Goals. And then in the end, we've landed on we do 3 things. At launch, we just had to drive awareness of them. And now we have like a AAA model, which is awareness, action, drive governments and businesses particularly to take greater actions to achieve the goals, and then accountability. So, 193 countries signed up to these things. They have to be held accountable, and they have to know that they're going to be held accountable. So we won't hold them accountable. That'd be the UN's job, and hopefully their people's job. Our job is to create the atmosphere that makes people realise there are goals, realise there are actions they have to take to achieve them, and then realise that they will be held accountable if they don't.
And this is maybe an unfair question to ask you because you're not holding anyone accountable, as you said, but what does accountability mean? As in, how can the UN hold a country to account on something like that?
So the UN is, the goals aren't legally binding, so it's not like COP, where the Paris Agreement, which is a legally binding thing, and if you don't live up to it, if you signed it and you don't fulfil it, you get fined. It's an agreement, but what the UN does do rather well is convene and has these moments, particularly notably once a year, the UN General Assembly in September, where world leaders come, and in July every year they have to come and report back on what they're doing to do the goals. So at its top level, a government has to stand up and show its plan for achieving those goals. You also then work with a network of UN agencies that are focused on different areas, so environment or UN Women, etc. You also have the NGO community around them. So, and that's global, and then you have national versions of all of that. So, if you had a country that was significantly backfiring on, say, gender equality, you would probably get, not just at a global level, the UN, but also at the national level, those NGOs. And then our job sometimes is to fan that with, an activist here or a celebrity there to call upon the government to do better. So, we didn't actually drive this, but if you noticed recently, Rihanna did quite a cool thing about education when the G7 was happening in Hamburg. She sort of tweeted Merkel and said, how about education for girls? And she was sort of put up to that by one of the big female NGOs. So it's just light pressure. Now, we're not Greenpeace, like we would never, and I'm not dissing their tactics, but theirs is pretty strong-armed accountability. Theirs is to turn up with a kind of megaphone and say VW are sort of disgraceful diesel liars. That's not our modus. Our modus is more to say there's a plan, it's achievable, we've all got to get with a plan, let's do more. And the accountability from us is more fanning those moments of accountability so that you want to be part of them rather than a stick. We're more carrot than stick.
Okay. When you start a startup company with the intention of growth, etc., you are forced to think how big it can get, and you tell yourself a lie and a story, of course, to get yourself on that journey, which is motivating to both yourself and investors coming in. In your case, your first story was basically to reach 7 billion people, right, from day one?
Yeah.
Was that always the intention?
For the launch week, it was a tactic.
Yeah.
It was a tactic it was an engagement tactic.
So how daunting is that mission?
Well, we said it ourselves, so it's sort of less daunting than saying 3 billion in a funny way, because what we I can't remember how we came to it, but by then there were probably about 4 or 5 of us core who would brainstorm our way through it, and I think we sort of just ratcheted ourselves up one planning session, just said, sod it, let's go the whole hog, let's go everyone. But what I found was, I am relentlessly on the road meeting people all the time, trying to solicit support for the goals. It's so much easier to get someone to lean in to say, we're going to try and reach 7 billion people in 7 days, do you want to help? Because everyone goes, oh, that's fun. Whereas if you go, we're trying to convert 2 billion, AB1 influencers in the Northern Hemisphere, they'll be like, good luck, and, goodbye. So it was a tactic. We knew we'd never reach 7 billion. Especially for no bank account and absolutely zero infrastructure from a standing start. But we thought we'll have a good crack. But by saying it, it made it feel more enticing for people to get involved. And then also I think it was a statement. It was almost like a brand statement. The goals are for everyone. So we're going to get them to everyone. And in the end, we got to 3.5 billion. We think. I mean, metrics are metrics, right? But in that funny way, you can coach that many mentions, and that TV channel put it on, so that definitely their whole reach is this. So obviously that's fanned, but it was big. We stopped New York, and we were on the Global Citizen stage, and we did a TV show in every country, and we got a flag raised in every country, and there's loads of press coverage and quite a lot of social. So
still only hit 3.5 billion.
The mere 3.5 billion, yeah.
I don't know how you sleep at night. Kind of disappointment.
Just over 50%, I guess. No, that is 50%.
That's terrible maths.
Yeah.
You're going to edit that out as well, aren't you?
Yeah, I'm going to edit that out.
Pathetic.
Grumpy Rich is a bit thick.
Grumpy Rich is getting it all
Didn't go
wrong.
to Oxford, Didn't go to Oxford.
So true.
You go to Cambridge.
You're barely the
went to
typical
Cambridge,
Oxbridge type. Okay, what are the 17 sustainable development goals?
So I got asked a really interesting question quite early doors. Richard and I were in New York with Paul Polman, CEO of Unilever. And he said, look, I'm supporting the goals. Obviously, he was part of the committee that drew them up. But he said, what you guys need to communicate is the goal of the goals. And we spent quite a good piece of thinking time crunching them down, because they're extreme. The point is that they cover everything. They go from the old goals of the Millennium Development Goals of things like no poverty, no hunger, gender equality, full education, maternal mortality. But they also include things like clean energy, climate action, life below water, life on land, partnerships for the goals, peace and justice, innovation and infrastructure. But the goal of the goals, if you were to summarise it, is a world where we have eradicated extreme poverty. So that's the bottom billion, less than $1 a day kind of poverty that kills you. We have made better inequalities. So you're never going to get rid of inequality, and that is sort of unhealthy to even try, but at least reduced inequalities, because as I was advocating for last night, a world where there's as much inequality as there is right now is not sustainable. And you've reversed the effect of climate change. So the goals kind of bucket into those three things: poverty, inequality and climate change. And the thing about them is they are a holistic plan, because I think, and this is what I find very satisfying about working with them, is any of those single issues, you have the unintended consequences of screwing up something else. So like a lot of people know about the whole, if you put a malaria net in and you haven't thought about what it's coated in, people in some areas will end up using them as fishing nets because that's the most, they could afford to lose a couple of kids, they can't afford to lose their livelihood, and then you end up polluting the ocean because it was coated in something that, whereas actually if you are hitting all the goals all the time with what you're doing, that won't happen, because there would have been a thing in one of the climate goals that would have explained that that's not the right substance that coats a net. I mean, that's just one tiny example. The bigger ones are things like a world at 2 degrees. So if the temperature goes up by 2 degrees, most of the progress that's been made on malaria in the last 10 years gets wiped out, because the mosquito just, completely thrives and goes much more widely than it is now. And peace and justice, like we have at the moment, enormous migration problems, which will create enormous problems down the line of health and lack of education and instability. So the point about them is they're a really holistic system that work together, achieving those 3 things.
How does it make you feel when you're pushing into trying to achieve these things, and your job is to amplify that as much as possible, and then you get the leader of the free world come out with such bollocks? Is the way I can describe it. That's my views on
when
it.
I wake up
That's
in the
a
morning,
challenge, right?
yeah, and of course it's a challenge. But I wake up in the morning and think, well, at least he's handsome. So one of our partners on climate is this lady called Christiana Figueres, an extremely powerful lady who negotiated the Paris Agreement when she was the director of the UNFCCC. And I was talking to her when Trump got elected. I was in America when he got elected, actually. That was definitely very depressing, very shocking, as it was for all the Americans. People were just crying. I'd go into meetings with people the next day and they're just crying. And I think they're still crying, probably. And I said to her, oh, crap, that's bad, isn't it? And she said, the point is, direction of travel is set. The economy is moving that way. Renewables are clearly recognised now as the smarter thing to put your money into. We're moving. The public awareness is moving. Regulation is moving. Imagine it like a long freeway of cars. One car has hit the curb, but the direction of travel is set. And so that's like worst case, I would say, is see it as a car that's gone off the rails. The best case, and I saw it happen on the ground in America that day, and it's absolutely happened since with the climate movement, with the women's movement, with the racial equality movement, it's galvanised what was perhaps complacency to realise that you cannot take anything for granted. That he's a, as Richard says, Richard's so diplomatic, he's a special kind of president. And in special times, you have to take special measures. So if you do care about equality in America, now is the time to go on a march. If you care about the climate, Paris is great, a great agreement, but there's someone threatening to pull out, so get on the march again. So in a funny way, people have gone from being terrifically depressed about it to quite electrified by it in a way that they wouldn't have been had Hillary been in power.
Hey guys, this is Luke here, co-founder of Contour Space. Sorry to interrupt this awesome podcast, but I just wanted to tell you a bit more about us. We're a startup ourselves, helping awesome companies find amazing office spaces from start to finish, whether you're looking for a couple of desks to your next big HQ. We take care of the whole process from start to finish, and our service is completely free. Check us out on contour.space.
Do you mind actually telling our listeners, I know because we've talked about it, the actual campaign that you ran, but I feel like a lot of what we're talking about almost does a disservice to how awesome that campaign to reach 7 billion people in 7 days really was. Yeah. Can you take us through a whistle-stop tour of that campaign from start to finish, the highlights, so people really get just how cool it was?
I can try. I mean, the best thing genuinely is to go look at the website. Yeah, go look at projecteveryone.org. That's where the case studies are.
And you 100% have to do it. It is so
do
incredible.
It now.
It is amazing.
Whilst you're listening.
Yeah, ignore
unless you're driving, don't do it now.
Yeah, and then you won't be able to watch the video, so do it later. Or pause.
Yeah.
So when we said we'll go for 7 billion, we did a very, very crude mapping exercise of 7 billion people. And we tried to get down to as few large channels to reach people as we possibly could. So we worked out 5.5 billion people regularly access a television set. So, okay, we've got to do something in TV. my friend Benji B, the DJ said, he said, radio babes, even the aliens get that. And I'm like, yep, absolutely right. So radio was a thing. So faith, like most of the world organises itself by faith, just us heathens that tend not to up here, but mainly, so faith had to be a thing. Education, obviously, kids are somewhere, and so on. So we mapped these channels out, and we ended up with 6 or 7 of them, and then we just designed a something to go in each channel. So the campaign was built like that, as sort of channel blocks. So we partnered up with Global Citizen, and we, through Richard, we got Chris Martin and Beyonce to headline their festival that year in New York, and she did the most sort of rocking set on Goal 5 I've ever seen, and Chris's was great, and it was a great show, and we packaged that up and put that all over the world. BBC Worldwide put that out for us. So that was TV, like, that's it was a good show, actually. I don't know if you can still watch that, but it was a really good hour, and it was interlaced with things about the goals. Then Radio Everyone was what we created, obviously me and my MD's radio background. We just thought it was too cool not to. So we ended up with 17 pieces of content, 1 per goal, in several different languages, distributed through like thousands of radio stations. We also did audio drops from kids. And when I am 10, there will be no more poverty because the Sustainable Development Goals are super cute.
It's your Newcastle accent, right?
No, I was trying to be sort of Latino 10-year-old boy, of which I have no knowledge, so that's a mistake. I'm sorry, listeners.
But it's staying in.
So it's a very cute, the Radio Everyone audio, which I think probably is in the bowels of our site still somewhere, but also had like Bono doing an interview with Christiana Mamampour about Africa, and really cool stuff. So that's Radio Everyone. The World's Largest Lesson is a programme that we created in partnership with UNICEF, where it is what it is. It's a lesson about each of the goals. We had Sir Ken Robinson come and curate 2,000 teachers open source to make all the lesson plans. Yeah, he's a dude. He's like a friend now, and he's the patron of that lesson. And now we refresh that every year. So we're getting up to some huge numbers, like hundreds of millions of kids have managed to access it. And that goes on. So that's a programme that we continue to do each year with a different theme. And now we're getting kids to take action, and we're getting kids to see how they can connect with other parts of the world. And
be accountable.
And be accountable. And this year we did a food one, so that we got kids to rate their plate. So you kind of go, how much is that healthy? Is it not healthy? What is that going to be like in a different country? What's the packaging on that? What are the food miles? And put it on a map. And then last year we did of all the people in your life, how many that are influential? How many are girls? How many are boys? We did a gender one. We did a map. So we're getting some really nice visual manifestations of kids and the goals. The goals were sort of designed not for kids, because obviously it's a big political thing, but all those colourful icons and the words, we thought if kids can't say them, then they're never going to grow up with that sense of the plan. So that was the World's Largest Lesson. We did a prayer for everyone. We got the Pope to talk about it. So we did we got the heads of all the major religions to write a common prayer that, you know, we respectfully gave out and hoped people did, but we got really good feedback about how many people did that. I always forget some. The media was a channel, obviously the news, and that was where we got a flag raised in Chengdu by a panda for clean energy. We got a North Korean diplomat, you can't see it on the radio, but literally in the North Korean parliament, he just sort of whipped out a flag for a second and then whipped it back when he was inevitably killed. But just jazz, and that got picked up and led the world. And then we did this enormous projection on the UN building, one of those multi-dimensional things that went through each goal with like a scorched landscape, and then like coming to life and being amazing, you know, women being oppressed, women being amazing. Really cool, cost a fortune. I raised the money for it. And it was so good that the police said you could only do it once. And I was like, oh my God. Because the plan was to do it every night that week of Unger. You could see it from the whole of Manhattan. It was going to be amazing. It was amazing once. But yeah, it was pretty cool. And obviously we got lots of influencers like Malala and Emma Watson and Leo DiCaprio to get their goal board and just tweet. So the classic kind of awareness push. And that's how we think. When you aggregate all those numbers up, radio listeners, TV show, and you get to about half the planet.
You even had the Oxbridge type Stephen Hawking.
That was really, we got Stephen Hawking. That's a really moving video, actually. That's a good one to look at.
Space.
But a sweet little story about Molly, who's in our team then. She's now off being clever and writing comedy. But she went on the shoot with him. He is in a separate place from his voice, which is just fun to think about. But she went on the shoot with him, and so there she is with Professor Hawking, the most clever man in the world. And she was totally, I mean, as happens in our jobs, obviously we come across quite a lot of impressive people. You can get rabbit leg. We've all got our story. She was just Stephen Hawking, and she kind of went up to him and did that with his shirt and went, it's a really nice shirt. Just came back to the office. Oh God, I was with the biggest brain in the world, and I said he had a nice shirt on.
So you mentioned rabbit leg. Who have you got rabbit leg in front of? Obama, Beckham, Beyonce?
I didn't meet David. I made myself fall over to try and touch one of Beyonce's children. I mean, that wasn't rabbit leg. That was like really dreadful opportunism. A little bit rabbit leg. I had to take Richard up to do the BBC Worldwide deal. BBC Worldwide's run by a friend of mine, but we went up to this massive buyers conference they do in Liverpool, which is set in one of those enormous arenas, and it's where they'll like show the new Doctor Who, and then Strictly Come Dancing will dance down the middle, and it's the kind of commercial side of selling formats and what have you, and it's about 2,000 buyers from all over the world in this arena, this show going on. And I'd agreed that we would get Chris Martin to come. He was in LA, couldn't come over, but he promised he'd do a live link up into the screen, into the room. And I arrived with Richard, who's lovely, but as we walked into this arena, I don't think any of us realised what it was going to be like. It was like a sort of the Super Bowl, and I got massive rabbit leg because I thought, oh my God, there's a live link up. It's Chris Martin, who's not unpleasant, and there's just so many things could go wrong, and I just couldn't. I just had to give the mic over to Richard because we were supposed to like cue him in and have a dialogue. I was like, can't speak.
So those are two funny stories, but what is the funniest story you can remember from working on Project Everyone?
Oh, there's so many.
Are there any completely ridiculous slapstick moments?
I mean, not that are fun. There's quite a bad one when we nearly got sued by Lionsgate last summer.
Oh, let's tell that one. That sounds great.
we normally make a big cinema film each year around one of the themes. So in the launch year, it was with John Hegarty from BBH, and he made us one called We Have a Plan, which was great. And then the next year we remade the Spice Girls. That was the biggest hit we had that year virally. And then last year, because we were doing healthy, not hungry theme, we I thought the rather good idea of pastiching the Hunger Games to say let's end hunger, no more games. The mistake we made was not asking Lionsgate in advance would they mind, and the World Food Programme who we work with said, I think that'd be cool because they're really supportive about hunger, they've been really good to us, and we were working like crazy speed, so sort of we wrote to them, I didn't hear back, made it anyway, and that was on my summer holiday about a week before it was due to kind of break in cinemas, and I got someone infamous who I won't say because I can't, rang me up and said, you're about to get a cease and desist letter from Lionsgate, I think you should desist. I was like, oh shit. It was awful, it was really awful. Totally ruined my family holiday.
Well, so you had to just pan the whole thing?
Yeah.
Oh, God.
Wow.
It was awful, and we had a really good, lovely lady had put the money up from a corporate, and she was amazing about it, and she said, these things happen, don't worry about it.
Okay, that's nice.
Don't worry about it. Please don't make us give you the money back.
So that's almost like the most, so what's the most moving?
Personally, was watching Beyonce do that feminist set. The most moving all the time are when we get the kids sending stuff back from World's Largest Lesson. That's pretty cool. I mean, last year's goalkeepers event, seeing Obama talk and say things like "You're all goalkeepers here," that's kind of moving. And then looking back and seeing all of my team up along the balcony. I mean, going down in bits, because I think they're so exhausted from the effort of pulling that off. And then it went so well. That was really, personally, as a founder, that was really moving to see a kind of something you've been working towards come off so well.
Where do you think the future's going to go for Project Everyone? Are you going to do this for the rest of your life now?
Well, it's an interesting challenge. Kate and I have always said, let's do it till 2020 as full-on drivers of it. And then I think what our plans, and 2020 is a great year of reckoning. It's the Olympic year. We're working with the Olympics to work out how do you make it the first sustainable Olympics in terms of goals. And then I think we'd like to become sort of chairman types of it and hand it over to the new guard, because there comes a point when we'll have pulled all our strings. Like what we do relies so heavily on who you can pull in and what tricks you can pull and who do you know. There's got to be a point that we've done it, we've used it all up. What we don't want to be is drifting around the sort of UN system going, we were important once. So I think the idea is to succession plan, and we've got an amazing team. The team at Project Everyone are just fantastic. Every single person is extraordinary human being. So that's sort of the plan where when we get to it, how could we bear it? I don't know, but that's sort of the plan. And then I'd like to work maybe in some specific areas. Like I'm very passionate about the ocean goal, like I was talking about last night. I'd like to work with other organisations who want to do more with the goals. But what is really nice actually is for now to be totally locked into something with joy in my heart every day is a great feeling, and it's been like that from the beginning. So it's going to be it's going to have been an amazing 6 years, and then if we carry it on, amazing, and if we don't, really positive legacy.
We interrupt this episode to invite you to enjoy a moment of calm. I'm Tamara Levitt, the writer and narrator of the meditations in the Calm app. Amidst the chaos and busyness of life, it's so important to pause. The calm and clarity we gain through meditation is an essential part of what makes a great leader. So take a moment now to close your eyes and bring your attention to your breath. Inhaling deeply and exhaling slowly. Feel your lungs expanding and contracting. And as you take this next breath, feel your whole body relax. And then, when you're ready, open your eyes. To learn more about the Calm app, visit calm.com/secretleaders for a 1-month trial. And now, back to today's guest.
This last section is all about the ups and downs, lessons and failures, and finding balance along the way, and generously sponsored by calm.com, the meditation app, which you're a new user of, I suppose.
Certainly am.
Fantastic. Well, do you meditate yet?
Well, no, I don't meditate. I do yoga a lot, and I try and be mindful. I haven't mastered. I'm such a busy head person. I haven't yet mastered the art of literally sitting and doing nothing apart from thinking. But I admire it very much. I'd like to be.
What do you do to find calm in your life?
Run, yoga, swim.
Do you think it's important to just zone out?
Really important. And I think increasingly we're learning more about the science behind quite how important that is. But yes, I've always found that.
Who's the calmest person you know?
My son, my 10-year-old.
Wow.
Very calm.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
Not taking after you then, is he?
He's not taking after me at all.
Well, what was the toughest moment in your professional life? You know, was it at Project Everyone? Was it the BBC? Was it at Fallon, like trying to be a CEO?
I think
something stand out?
Yeah, I think Fallon definitely. Coming back, having my daughter and having to interrupt maternity leave ridiculously early because Nokia had pulled everything was really stressful. And actually, I don't do regrets at all, but I'm annoyed.
Thanks for ruining the future
I'm
question.
annoyed that had to happen in my life because it could have been a beautiful time with a new baby, and I was actually I was everything I never wanted to be. A stressed out, working, kind of, practically breastfeeding on one side and texting on the other. It was like a nightmare. Nightmare.
What is the most cutting and negative feedback you've ever had, and how did you take it? And did you what was your reaction to that?
Well, that is on the global goals, because it's so funny, because I'm generally, I pride myself on being extremely self-deprecating and humble, and I don't mind what people think about me. But somebody said at the Gates Foundation, I was reported back to me, well, she's not very strategic, and I was livid. Furious.
What do you do about it?
Bought glasses, spent my life, spent the next few months wafting around reading copies of
Proving everyone
Strategy
wrong.
for
Harvard
Dummies.
Business Review. And then I figured, let it go, it doesn't matter.
So what are you going to say to that person now? Are you strategic?
He doesn't work there anymore.
Hey.
Like, yay!
You outmaneuvered that guy.
Yeah.
Well, on the flip side, what's the most uplifting memory you've got from your career?
I mean, I feel so lucky that I couldn't even begin to prioritise. But I mean, standing on that stage in Glastonbury was pretty amazing. There's been several stage moments through Radio 1. Fallon was just being with successive Christmas parties where I introduced the concept of fancy dress, and every time we sort of balked, thinking like, oh God, this is going to be really awkward, and then every time everybody's throwing themselves into it. That was really uplifting. But the goals, I mean, every time I've been to the UN and the UNGA, first time up the mountain at Davos, standing on stage at Cannes and introducing the Spice Girls film, all those they just keep coming. I feel really lucky.
Do you or have you had any mentors?
Millions of them,
Oh,
she
yeah?
said. I mean, I'm exaggerating. I love a mentor.
Okay, so
Yeah.
who's you going to give a shout out to?
Amanda McKenzie, who...
She's from
She is
Aviva.
now... Well, she was Aviva. She's now business in the community. She was one of my first bosses in advertising. And she joined us at the Goals campaign. She was our sort of grown up in residence for 2 years. Amazing mentor. Sherilyn Shackle, who founded the Marketing Academy, fantastic mentor. Andy Parfit from Radio 1, my controller-in-chief at the time, and just a great, great colleague and friend. I mean, God, I don't know where to stop. Richard now, so many.
Yeah, so you think having mentors and coaches is an essential part of success?
Really essential. I don't know where I would have been. I've always got 2 or 3 coaches on the go.
Coming right towards the end now, because you're a busy lady.
Gotta
You've got a
run.
world to go and save.
Got to run.
Describe yourself.
What, like 5'8" and
I don't.
brown hair? You're looking at me. That's a weird question.
Next. I know, but it's a hard thing for someone to do.
Oh, I think I'm an optimist. Good fun. I hope for the best. I'll try anything. Believer in people. Believer in humanity. Believer in possibility. Lover of children.
What is
Especially my own.
best, especially your own, obviously, priorities? What's the best advice you've ever received?
Well, sort of quite prosaically, Andy Duncan, who was my boss at the BBC and went off to run Camelot after that, when I saw him in one of these gaps, he said, make sure what you do next is international, which I'd never done before. My husband I woke up one morning when I was doing Jamie Oliver and the Global Goals for 18 months, which was just 2 jobs. I mean, it's just one job too many. And my husband said, why do you have 2 jobs? You don't have to do that. And that was fucking good advice, because I was like, yeah, I don't. I'll stop doing one of them.
What's the best advice you could give our listeners? It's not do something international. So
just make sure you're looking after yourself. You know, when you're pursuing these great businesses and these great dreams, make sure it's not coming at the cost of something that you might regret, and just make sure you're always giving a little bit more of a shit than you think you are about the rest of the world, the people around you, the world, whatever bit it is. Just give that little bit more of a shit and do something, whatever that is in your business. Change a business model, or donate, or act, or whatever it is. Just we all need to do like a little bit more.
Okay, so final question. You used to own the airways of Radio 1, so let's pretend you do again. You have 1 minute to own every single radio station transmission in the world. What message are you going to put out? What's your one big message if every ear could hear it?
No pressure.
That is an immense question. Well, I would talk from a goals perspective. I would say there is a plan in place that will make the world better and significantly better for everybody on it. So I would encourage everybody around the world to look up that plan, look up globalgoals.org, spend some time with the goals, have a real think about what it is you could do in any one of those goals to make a difference. Never believe you can't make a difference, because everybody can make some sort of positive impact on the people in the world around them, and love each other just a little bit more.
It's a beautiful 60 seconds. Thank you very much for your time, Gail.
Next week on Secret Leaders.
One of the reasons we succeeded in the early days, despite being first-time founders, is we just used up everything we had. And that came to a head in an investor board meeting where I said I was going to do something and I just hadn't done it. There was this one chat where we were trying to figure out what my role going forward would be. And Ian, who is my best mate, just stopped me and was just like, you don't have to be at this company anymore. And I was like, oh, all right, maybe I should leave. And it was absolutely the right call.
That was Pete Finlay, known to many as Pete Smith of Songkick and Silicon Milk Roundabout. Songkick is known around the globe as the world's largest concert discovery service. He is one of the pioneers of the London tech scene. If you want a real insight into what it's like building a company that's growing too fast for your own comfort, and the tough challenges, imposter syndrome, and insecurities that develop throughout this whole process, then Pete's brutally honest take next week on how he handled this hypergrowth is a story you need to hear. So tune in or you'll miss out.
Don't miss an episode by subscribing to us on iTunes or Spotify. Just search for Secret Leaders. You can also check out our website at secretleaders.com for show notes and behind the scenes of each interview.
Hi, I'm Simon LaFosse, the founder of LaFosse Associates. We're a young, high-growth and co-owned business, and we're experts in attracting talent. If you want to build a great team, or you just want advice, please get in touch. We run free seminars and we'd love to see you there. Thanks for your time.
This episode was hosted by Dan Murray, produced by me, Rich Martell, edited by Harry Morton at Lower Street Media, and if you're hearing this, that's probably thanks to Jennifer Osman, our marketing whiz from Canada.